I can confirm that the more than 8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the American taxpayers' dime will no longer be happening. The DOJ team is working on canceling those payments now.
The First Amendment does talk about the freedom of the press. That means that the government needs to be free from the press as well. They have no say in the press. The press cannot be free if they are bound to the government, because it is the press's duty to report on the government. You know, their job was to do what DOJ is doing now. You know what? I want to clarify something here, too, because we try and be transparent here. First off, the dominoes, they just keep falling. Yeah. Right? This is just, it's a story that keeps growing and growing. And I think we're going to look back on this as a watershed moment where people said, wow, that's how corrupt our government was. We knew there was waste. We knew there was $500 billion a year in fraud. We didn't realize that the spending was so frivolous, or in some cases, actually subversive.
Yeah.
Now, I want to be clear about this. There have been some stories out there that are not necessarily accurate, and that's given the left ammo to fact check and miss the principle of the story. And the truth is, yes, a lot of different entities, news agencies have been receiving taxpayer funds in a way that is completely inappropriate, I would argue violates the First Amendment. And I want you to know that we did cover it live. There's a difference in things that we cover live as they are breaking, right? Because we feel the need to let you know what is at that point in time being reported, versus story segments like this where we make all the sources available and are meticulous about our research. Yesterday, this was breaking as we were on air, the Politico USAID funding.
Apparently, this came out about Politico. Politico, I think, received $8.1 million in government funding. And also of note, apparently, Politico just missed payroll.
Really?
Yes. Apparently, due to a technical glitch, they said to their employees, they're like, hey, sorry about that.
All right, so that was us live yesterday as it was breaking.
The technical glitch is not in dispute, I believe.
No, that is not in dispute.
The missing of payroll thing.
So we have to clarify this a little bit. So here's what you are seeing out there, that Politico got $8 million from USAID in 2024. Right here, we can bring this up. It says Politico is owned by Axel Springer, which in turn owns Business Insider, which publishes attack journalism, whose targets have included Elon Musk. So the $8.1 million that Politico received last year from USAID has been used to support the owner of Business Insider and its efforts. That is not accurate. There is a number that is $8 million. And it is taxpayer dollars, and it is going to Politico, but it is not all from USAID. The reason I say that is important is because the left is fact-checking it, saying, actually, that's not true. It's just a couple $100,000. And the left reads it and moves on. It is $8 million. That's not accurate reporting. The $8 million is a total number that Politico received from all government agencies. That's worse. That means that more government agencies were giving Politico money for their hackery. About $24,000 came directly from USAID. You can check all of the references, link in the description, so that you know all of this checks out. It is still $8 million, but the left will fact check that number as coming from USAID as false. Technically is true. I would argue it's worse because this is a clear example of collusion where all arms and departments of government are working together to fund propaganda. And someone who answered perfectly on this, specifically how this was actually subsidizing subscriptions, Karoline Leavitt, who's probably the biggest job upgrade that I think I've seen in my lifetime.
I was made aware of the funding from USAID to media outlets, including Politico, who I know has a seat in this room. And I can confirm that the more than 8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the American taxpayers' dime will no longer be happening. The DOJ team is working on canceling those payments now. Again, this is a whole of government effort to ensure that we are going line by line when it comes to the federal government's books. And this president and his team are making decisions across the board on, do these receipts serve the interests of the American people? Is this a good use of the American taxpayers' money? If it is not, that funding will no longer be sent abroad, and American taxpayers will see significant savings because of that effort.
Beautiful. Perfectly done. Mm-hmm. Taxpayer dollars subsidizing subscriptions. She wasn't caught flat-footed. She errs on the side of caution, being very articulate, being very accurate with her words. I expect good things.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, they were saying these are pro subscriptions from Politico that were maybe 10,000-ish. I saw some reporting on this. Just go to X.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna find the information more quickly on the #1 news app. Like it just is people telling you what's going on in the world.
And even then, it doesn't cost millions of dollars.
No.
For example, we have subscriptions to certain news wires, or we have
Yes.
subscriptions, for example, to certain royalty-free images or tracks. It does not cost millions of dollars.
No.
This is a
That makes
money
sense,
laundering
though.
scheme.
This is a media company. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for the USAID to have it, or an FBI or a CIA agency to have Politico. Get it on your own money.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and even just subsidizing any form of media, I would argue, is a violation of the First Amendment. Okay, let me explain to you why. There's a freedom of the press, right? There's a lot under the First Amendment. And the left will throw out things like separation of church and state. Well, that's not in the First Amendment. I understand what you're discussing. You are also misinterpreting the spirit. The First Amendment does talk about the freedom of the press. That means that the government needs to be free from the press as well. They have no say in the press. The press cannot be free if they are bound to the government, because it is the press's duty to report on the government. You know, their job was to do what Doge is doing now. Do you understand that? That's the only role of the press. They're supposed to be, the reason the First Amendment is in there is for the same reason we have the 3 branches of government, to be a check and a balance against a government, a free press. Otherwise, it's Pravda with lesbian bloggers.
Nobody wants that.
Except for lesbian bloggers.
I don't want it.
Not when you see them eating Cheetos. So this is
hungry.
how the left is spinning it. Here's Erica Pandy and Sarah Fisher at Axios. They wrote, the government spends trillions of taxpayer funds annually. Okay. The fact that the Trump administration is focused on slashing relatively small media budgets at the outset of Trump's second term speaks to how seriously targeting media companies is their priority. Hold on a second. 8 million here, a few million there, a couple million here, 100,000 here, 100,000 there, 100,000 here, another 100 million here. Guess what? It adds up. And at a certain point, we find ourselves at the intersect of 220 to $500 billion a year in fraud, not to mention waste. Where do we start? We know it's not the Department of Education. Got to add more money there. We know it's not entitlement programs. Got to throw more money at that. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. No, absolutely not. Hey, all right. Where? How about we start with, because we don't know the level of fraud, to be clear. How about we start with the most illegitimate, unconstitutional forms of government action, like subsidizing media. I don't care if it's $2 or if it's $2 billion. Bet my life it's at least $2 billion overall. It should be no dollars. There's no discussion to be had here that it is the government's role to be funding media, especially when you understand that that media then, in many cases, comes out and endorses candidates who promise larger government. Hey, let me ask you this. How do you think you garner more positive coverage from Politico, Reuters, NPR, New York Times? Do you think promising bigger budgets might help? And they're right about one thing, though. The government has been spending money on media for a long time. This is not new. Media propaganda has been going on here for years.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Pregnant trans men feel alone and mistreated by America's healthcare system. Extra!
That's because they're the wrong gender. Hey, if you're one of those, take a paper, read about it. Also, go to CrowderBits.com, get you a nice shirt, give you a nice little hug there, nice and tight.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Transgenders, might I suggest a waste paper basket. That's the place for you. Extra, extra, read all about it. You freaks. See?
We're talking to you.
Don't look at him. Kim?
Her.
All right, so let's just go through some of the entities. At what point are they actually private businesses? Let's just call them government entities.
There you go.
Government news agencies.
You can't survive without the government's money. Bye.
Government content creation. Whatever you want to call it. Let's go with Politico. All right, we'll start with Politico. So from USAID, they received about $24,000. But the total, and this is just 2024, in taxpayer dollars granted to them from the government is $8.4 million.
Well, actually, it may be a little worse than that.
What's that?
So it looks like there's about $32 million in funding. So, and it's supposed to be kind of over the lifetime, but lifetime looks like it starts in 2016 with very small numbers. And then those lines go up quite a bit with a new administration for some reason.
Yeah.
And then they go back down with This.
Oh.
And by the way, there was no
strange. $32 million.
They didn't have Doge. I guarantee you, President Trump back then didn't realize the level of corruption. That's why you're seeing a man on a mission now.
Yes.
Or he was seeing it, no one was believing him. Nobody was helping him because
Exactly.
he didn't have his own people with him.
And by the way, that's from all government agencies. So that's all of it.
All government.
USAID. It's just
I don't
insane
care.
numbers.
I don't care if they're funneling money from the VA or they're taking it from your Social Security check, some slush fund. Doesn't matter. It's my money, and I want it now, bitch. Okay? No annuities.
When you have huge fraud and
And you need cash now.
Called DOGE.
877 no cash.
Here, let me show you Politico, though, what they have done, too. So you have actually funded these stories. And I know the Hunter Biden laptop was deemed Russian disinformation. Okay, so that's bad. But does it now really makes sense when you look as to how vigorously these agencies, these government arms of propaganda, these news publications fought against the idea of a free press. Now it makes sense. Let's look at some of those political headlines while they were receiving your money. Trump is pushing falsehoods. Some Republicans are worried about the fallout. 2024 may be the year online disinformation finally gets the better of us. Oh, yeah, we have to be concerned about the non-government funded disinformation. Starting to get the Orwellian picture? Let's go to AP, Associated Press. They're considered very legitimate. A lot of people in this industry use their newswire. 2024, government dollars, we don't know how much came from USAID. Right now, the total, though, in taxpayer dollars, $1.7 million. So some of those dollars come from the State Department, DOD. It is hard to track. This is just what we know now. And by the way, I'm willing to bet that they are physically burning hard drives. Now, again, it makes sense when you see, hey, AP, were they fighting for a free press? Were they fighting for independent journalists? Or were they part of the cabal silencing us, you, the American people, while stealing from you? Think about that. They stole your money to silence you. Some AP headlines during this time while government funded. Anonymous users are dominating right-wing discussions online. They also spread false information. And of course, that leads to always demanding they be removed. RNC's live streaming partner, Rumble, for the GOP debate is a haven for disinformation and extremism. Jeez. So think about this for a second. These sites, these publications are used for YouTube fact-checking. People get throttled. People get demonetized. Popular people you choose to watch. They go to an alternative. Remember, people used to, libertarians, go build your own YouTube. Okay, very expensive, multi-billion-dollar endeavor. Rumble, the people funded by the government say, gotta ban that too. It's not enough for you to go build your own sandbox. They have to bomb everyone else's sandbox. And the bombs are funded by your tax dollars. BBC, and I know what you're thinking. BBC, careful. BBC, of course it's funded by the government. Yeah. But I bet you didn't realize our government.
Are you taking the fucking piss?
I'm not. 2024 money. Total dollars, 2.1 million. In that case, it looks like all 2.1 million came from USAID. The BBC.
What?
The British Broadcasting Corporation. Why in the hell are they taking money from the United States? And why are we funding them? We're better than the Brits. That's why we left. Let's look at the headline. BBC fighting for free and open internet. BBC fighting for independent journalists. Here's some headlines. Disinformation poses biggest risk in the U.S. Social media. Is it really biased against U.S. Republicans? YouTube bans malicious insults and veiled threats. That was an article, by the way, about us.
What?
Malicious insults and veiled threats. We actually didn't make those, and we didn't violate those.
No, and they
policies.
weren't veiled either.
No, they weren't.
They're gay. Right out in the...
And this is what's so perverse about this. You cannot have a free press if everyone... Let me ask you this. Okay. You've seen every Disney movie. You've seen every children's movie where oil man bad, right? Business person bad. And we all accept the premise that there's a big, bad oil man who's funding some kind of an organization. And so what do? Well, they push propaganda for big oil. We used to hear that about Big Pharma until the left became their biggest fans, right? Yeah. They're lying. Look, big business is lying to you. Why? Someone holds the purse strings. Guess what? You have to dance, monkey, dance. Does that not apply to government? If the government is funding you, if the government is what allows you to exist, would you imagine that that entity is beholden to government? Would you imagine that they have a vested interest in larger government? Do you think that BBC, Politico, AP, do you think they're ever going to allow legitimate articles to go out advocating for less government, or advocating for downsizing government, or advocating for rooting out fraud in government? If you even started an op-ed, the boss at AP or BBC would walk down to your office, "What are you doing?"
Or looking into this stuff. One of the tweets that I saw, that's the biggest cell phone that I've seen so far, is like, guys, all this information you're seeing has been public. It was available in 2020, in 2022, in 2024. And I'm saying all this information has been public. And it took Elon Musk coming in to start exposing it. What were you doing?
Yeah.
Your job is to do stuff like this. That's right. You were on the take, it looks like.
Yes.
That's why you didn't cover this.
Yeah. And by the way, this is also proof positive when people say private business can do whatever they want. Really? Is YouTube a private business at that point? If these are the fact checkers, if these are the borderline content advocates, they don't tell you who it is, but we know that at least AP, we know that at least Politico, we know that at least WAPO have been included, we know that at least the Southern Poverty Law Center. But hold on a second. People have said it's not freedom of speech. You have the right to say whatever you want, not on a private platform. Okay, what if it's being supported by taxpayer dollars? It couldn't be more clear. It's no longer the digital town square. It's the digital Capitol steps, and they're removing you for speaking. Let me give you another example here. You may not remember this, but remember Biden's DHS? They published, here's some connections we didn't fully have, a cybersecurity infrastructure security agency report. CISA is how people pronounce it, okay? It listed this very show as the top spreader of misinformation.
Well, hold on. A top. We didn't quite get to number one.
I think it was a different day where they had like a little graph. Okay, this very show, the only show that provides all the references publicly.
Yeah.
Usually left-leaning, like right now you just saw CISA. Right now you just saw New York Times. They listed this show. They used taxpayer dollars to contract private companies to generate that report. And that report was used by social media platforms, including places like YouTube, like Twitter, like Facebook, to decide who to censor, who to shadow ban, who to throttle, who to demonetize. Taxpayer dollars generate a false report that this is misinformation. And that goes to big tech, and they say, aye, aye, Captain. We're just following orders. That seem like a free press to you? Mm-mm. That's why we need to know every single penny that has been spent. Because otherwise, there's no fixing the issue.
Yeah, and we'll be contacting our lawyers.
I think we'll be contacting the half-Asian...
Just to do some checking.
Half-Asian Kraken.
I'd like to know how many YouTube premium subscriptions are being paid for by U.S. tax dollars.
That's it. That's a legitimate question.
I mean, seriously, if they're subsidizing subscriptions to Politico and the New York Times and AP, then surely they're subsidizing subscriptions to YouTube Premium.
I've got
where they show CNN and they show CBS News and all that.
Or advertising.
Or YouTube
dollars.
TV.
Imagine if we had $8 million a year to spend just in advertising.
Yeah.
Right. Google and YouTube.
Yeah, that would be a
top result,
a
maybe.
game changer. Hey, if you like this video, you can comment or hit the notification bell to know when there are more videos, but it's probably taken from today's full show, which you can watch here. It's live, weekdays, 10 a.m. Eastern, where you can watch live. But I don't know when you're watching this, so it could be any of the day's show. When you're right now you're watching, it could be a Monday. It could be a Tuesday, Wednesday. Could be Thursday. Well, it could be Friday.